Okay, we're going to start with the birdstone. When somebody says this is natural, we flip it over and look at the holes and said, well, if it's natural, who then drilled the holes? A simple Google search will return the results that yes, this is in fact an artifact and it is classified as a birdstone. Now let's take this birdstone concept a little bit further and compare it to another birdstone which is made with a very similar design. A rational person would probably come to the same conclusion that these are both artifacts. And it is actually made a little bit differently. It's made from hard stone covered with clay and then fired. Firing clay requires a human being. So that kind of validates this is in fact an artifact. At the same exact location this birdstone was found, we found this. And again, very similar designs. This is made with the same technique. It's rock covered with clay and fired. Again, it requires a human to fire the clay. I'll show you another example of an object made from rock and fired clay. This is a bird. It's not classified as a birdstone, however, it is a bird by design. So even if I had my doubts, I could come to the same conclusion that fired clay requires a human, not only to make the artifact, but to cover it with clay and place it in the fire. Now we're going to look at similar objects found at the exact location. This item was made with the exact same technique. Stone, covered with clay and fired. And the shape is a mastodon or a mammoth. We see the head, the eye, and the trunk as it wraps around the bottom. Now this design concept carries over into a different type of rock. This rock is obviously not made with fired clay, but you can see the eye and the trunk as it wraps around. Trunk and eyes appear over and over again, and ironically, all these mammoths and mastodon carvings were found at the exact same location. So let's move on to another example. This is a projectile point. As you look at the edges, it's very obvious it was made with the Flint knapping or pressure flaking technique. Now you take that same concept, that same design concept, and look at some of the portable rock art items. So this is an item classified as portable rock art, and you'll see a face, but around the edges of this flint material, it has been pressure flaked to give it the shape. You'll see this in this profile as well. This is the human face profile, and they employed the same pressure flaking techniques around to give it the eye, nose, and the mouth. Piece of chert made into a face using the pressure flaking technique. You're going to find the pressure flaking technique employed in many different items. For example, let's take a look at some birds. Bird made out of chert, and the actual form was made by pressure flaking, requiring a tool, requiring a human. Even when making their animal figurines, pressure flaking was common. This little guy is a mammoth or a mastodon made from chert, and to give it its form, somebody used a tool to create this. This beautiful piece of flint was manufactured in the likes of a bird. You'll see the face and the beak, and then if you flip it over, you'll see obvious pressure flaking all the way around the edges. So we know that birds are very common. We saw the pressure flake birds. So what about stone that's not flint or not chert? Well, yeah, they made birds out of all different types of stone. Obviously, this hasn't been pressure flaked, it has been chipped, and then they employed another technique called pecking and grinding to come up with this form. But it is an obvious bird form. There is an obvious wing on the beak and the tail. Now, birds would be the most common item in portable rock art that we're finding. Secondly, mastodons and mammoths. So we talked about the human face reoccurring over and over and over again, and we saw the flint knapped examples, or the pressure flaking examples, right? So let's take a look at some faces that were not made with the pressure flaking method. This is a human face made with a different technique. So let's compare that to a different type of stone, and you'll see the same brow ridge in this rock as on this rock. Undeniably created by a human.
Deep down in my soul, there's a place no one knows. Got so close, can't deny.
When we find portable rock art, it's generally associated with other artifacts, typically not pottery or arrowheads, as they weren't invented or weren't in North America at the time portable rock art was made. However, we do find a fair amount of celts and scrapers and hammerstones and the like. What we do find very frequently at portable rock art sites is debitage. Now, debitage is a leftover material from the flint knapping process. It's typically chert, flint, or some other type of stone. Now, if you approach an archaeologist, their response would be primarily that it's not debitage, it's glacial till. This was just rock brought in from glaciers. But upon examining the actual debitage, we see the same percussion marks and pressure flaking and breaking points that we see in arrowheads and things like that, that are more commonly known in archaeology. So is it glacial till? In some cases, like for example, this bird, which was manufactured, but that looks like it was made from glacial till. So they probably did use glacial till. However, the most likely scenario when we're talking about debitage that's flint and chert, this was brought here by humans by either travel or trade. If you're still not convinced, you'll have to watch my documentary film on portable rock art, which goes into much further detail, not only on portable rock art, but the resistance we get from academia, archaeologists, and your typical arrowhead hunters.